Hello, fellow YouTubers. This is Jerry Byrne, and happy Thanksgiving. It is November 28th, 2024, Thursday, obviously. It's about 20 after 10 in the morning, Eastern Standard Time, HDG, Maryland. And I just posted on Facebook a question about the Pilgrims and Thanksgiving, and how 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 was it possible for them to navigate across the Atlantic Ocean? Uh, they encountered several storms. The Mayflower did. Several storms. There was a spread of nausea on the Mayflower that was really bad. I'm sure there were fatalities on the crossing of the Atlantic Ocean of the Mayflower, but somehow they found Cape Cod. How do you go without a compass and without a sextant, which I mentioned in the Facebook posting? How do you go from England to America across the dangerous, vast Atlantic Ocean? They had to go through iceberg fields too, I'm sure. It's a southerly route. You're traveling southwest, probably at a 45-degree angle to true west, which would be 270 degrees. They didn't have a compass. They didn't have degrees of longitude or latitude. I think they might have known longitude, and I'm not even sure when the longitudinal lines from the North to the South Pole were invented or created, but I'm thinking the 1700s, because the sextant was not invented until like 1758. And even then, it was a hit and miss kind of thing, because if there's an overcast or a storm, it's useless, because there's nothing on the horizon that you can point out and measure in terms of the angle of that, celestial, either the sun or stars, from there to the horizon is how you determine, with a sextant, is how you determine your longitude. But they didn't have anything like that on the Mayflower. So how did they navigate? How did they know that they were even just going west? The only thing that I can think of is where the sun comes up and where it goes down. But what if it's an overcast sky? Like today, we're having just endless rain today from an overcast sky. Okay, when you're out in the ocean, there are no landmarks. There are no references, none. It's just water. And let me tell you, there have been a lot of pilots and sailors that have died over the centuries because of that one reason, where they're out in the ocean and they get lost. Like, for example, the Battle of Midway, a famous example of how not having an accurate idea of well, they did have an accurate idea of which direction they were flying, but they didn't. They could still get lost, and in terms of turning around and going back to find the ship that they just left and took off from, there was no homing beacon or anything like that. I mean, if they were picked up on radar, the aircraft carrier could contact the pilot and let them know where they picked them up on the radar. But their radar reached out maybe 5 or 10 miles, I want to say. Could be 15 miles, even though. Yeah, and that was a really huge advantage that the Americans had over the Japanese. Japanese didn't have radar, I don't think. So anyway, my point is that even like in this day, the Mayflower was in the 1600s. What is it, 1627 or something like that? It was definitely the 17th century. Not in the 15. I thought it was in the 1500s. But no, it's 1627, 1630, something like that. And how in the world did they manage to find Massachusetts, which they wanted to go to New York, apparently, and they were in the right area, but, Cape Cod comes out from Massachusetts and sticks up into the ocean, like a dagger in a way, like a dagger on a curve. And they landed, I guess, at Cape Cod. I'm pretty sure they landed at Plymouth Rock is at Cape Cod. And so there's nothing to farm out in Cape Cod. So they had to find their way. I don't know what happened to the Mayflower, whether they scuttled it or not. I'm not sure. But okay, so they go south, from Cape Cod all the way down that, peninsula, and then back into Massachusetts, and they settled. I'm not sure what Plymouth Rock is. I have to look that up. But anyway, how in the world did they get across the Atlantic Ocean with a fairly accurate destination in 66 days too, and they ran into all kinds of storms and problems. Apparently they were very good sailors too. If they get through these storms, they knew to keep the nose of the ship into the wind, however you determine that. And the 1600s, you know, it's like, and I would imagine in a storm you pull all your sails down. You don't want the storm ripping your sails and having your sails pulling your boat over on its side and capsizing it. So you I don't know how they kept their nose into the wind in a storm. They had some bad storms too. So anybody that has an idea of how they navigated, I'd appreciate something in the comments section, because I'm a student of history and I'm fascinated by questions that aren't clearly answered on the internet. I mean, they say that a sextant was used by Captain Bligh and the Bounty to go to Hawaii with his shipment of breadfruit, but that was 1780. Like 1783 or 84. It was right at the end of our Revolutionary War. Bligh was English, you know, and he was not. But they kept on promoting that guy too, even though he suffered a mutiny. The only mutiny in English Navy history, I think. You know, they kept on promoting him. Anyway, anybody that has an idea, like how the Pilgrims, man, they had no technology. The only thing they knew is that they wanted to keep traveling west by southwest. Okay, how did they know that they were traveling in that direction? The only answer I can come up with is the sun. On any given day, where the sun rises, well, you want to point the nose of your ship. Oh, I forget what time of the year it was. I'm going to say it was in the spring. And you want to keep the nose of your ship where the sun rises in the east to the left. Right? Am I right about that? Sun rises, no, the west. They're traveling west. So the sun is behind them, coming up in the east, and you want to keep that to your left, correct? If it's behind you and you have your ship turned towards the left, yeah, I mean, it's going to be turned to the left anyway because you're heading southwest. And the sun is behind you, coming up behind you, so you want the sun somewhat behind you and to the right, not to the left, okay? Am I mistaken there? Anybody want to chime in? I'd appreciate it. Peace. Happy Thanksgiving.